Welcome everybody to our first official Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee meeting for the town of Burlington. As your select board member, I am excited and enthusiastic to see what this committee is going to achieve over the next year. I am going to go ahead and pull up our agenda so that I have it. So just bear with me one moment. While I'm waiting, let's go ahead for all the committee members. Everyone could go around and just introduce themselves. I will start. My name is Nick Priest, and I am the select board member of this committee.
Hey guys, I'm Carl Foss. I am the representative for the school committee.
Everybody, Sayed Rani, resident of Burlington over the past 10 plus years, been in Burlington almost 20 years. Happy to be here.
Should I go next? I'm Nancy Bonacera. I've been living in Burlington for 11 years. I have two daughters. They're in 5th and 7th grade. I have my PhD in chemical engineering, but I'm at home with the kids right now. I'm the co-chair of the Burlington Equity Coalition, vice president of Burlington Against Racism, and also a 4th precinct town meeting member. Thanks.
My name is Barbara Addison Reed. Everyone calls me BJ. My name is Barbara Jean, and so it's just a short version. I've lived in Burlington for 45 years. And I'm glad to make this my home.
And we're glad to have you. To be quite frank, I'm glad to have everybody. You know, as somebody who technically born in Winchester, but born and raised in Burlington, you know, like many of you, I've had the opportunity to see Burlington evolve over the years. I think that naturally this committee is a very interesting evolution of that general town evolution, that community evolution. And this hopefully will bridge the gap, you know, between, you know, a lot of areas, right? So, you know, I represent the town, obviously Carl represents the schools, you know, Nancy's representing the BEC, which, you know, I love the BEC because there's a big piece when we talk about community, right? For me, over the last 10, 15, almost even 20 years, I feel like there's been like a hole in not just our community, but in communities in general. You know, with the advent of the internet, we've all found a way to run into our own corners. You know, and we haven't had to be a community. And I think that the BEC is doing a wonderful job of bringing a lot of different organizations together, which in turn brings community together. And I think that, you know, for this committee, it's a very great have to have you here. So with that being said, logistics. So I know, Barbara, this time was a little tricky for you, but let's talk about, I'm thinking that we'll probably meet once a month, at least to start, especially as we move into the winter and holiday season with, you know, people's schedules being wonky. I think that once a month might be okay. Do Wednesdays work? Is there a better time for people? Let me know.
Wednesdays work for me. Anytime after 6 o'clock would be fine.
Okay.
I'm pretty much free any weeknight except every other Tuesday.
Right.
Wednesdays are fine for me, and 6 is better than 7:30.
Okay.
Yeah, most evenings are okay except Tuesday.
Okay. I just got done with our new transportation committee. They also like Wednesdays. So we're juggling these two around to see how we can best coordinate with everybody. And we'll figure it out though. All right. So there's only 5 of us, but we do need a chair, a vice chair, and a recording secretary. The transportation committee, full disclosure, forced me into being chair and recording secretary. So it'd be great if I was neither for this committee, you know, just in terms of, you know, my own general workload. So if anyone would like to themselves or a fellow committee member to be chair, vice chair, or recording secretary, open to that. Don't all jump at once.
I would prefer to be chair.
I would second that. I was gonna suggest BJ because she has so much experience. And I think she would be great for that role.
Excellent. So I have a motion and a second. We'll put it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's a unanimous 5-0-0. All right, Barbara, you are our new chair.
Thank you. I
Congratulations.
appreciate that.
I'll be happy to be vice chair. I'll go ahead and nominate myself if nobody else wants to do that.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye, all right. Unanimous. 5-0-0. All right, there must be recording secretary. And this is not as daunting as it sounds. Just keep a journal track of minutes so we can submit them when we do have a meeting. We're gonna try to record all of our meetings so we can also post the recordings, and that way that will also cover us as well. But in terms of what the state asks, we should have some semblance of a minutes recorded from our meetings.
Quick question.
Yes.
How timely do those minutes have to be submitted?
Uh,
For example, if I was to nominate myself, which I don't know if I should, but say I wanted to watch the recording to make sure I had everything as thorough as it should be.
mhm.
Could I take a few days to submit that?
I think so. Let me just, town clerk's office had sent me the rules. So I'm just gonna take a quick peek at those real quick. Okay, so who was there, where the meeting was held, what was talked about, what was voted on, the outcome of the votes. It's required that meeting minutes are submitted within 3 days or 2 meetings if requested. Minutes may be required within 10 days. So you have at the most 30 days, at the minimum 10 days.
Seems reasonable. I will nominate myself.
All right, I will second that nomination. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of Carl being our recording secretary?
Second.
Aye.
All right, that sounds unanimous to me. All right, that takes us to our next order of business. If I can find it.
Initial discussion of roadmap for the committee.
See, she's already been a great chair, everybody. Look at that. All right, so on that point, how would we like to see this committee move forward? This is pretty broad and open, so I think a general discussion would behoove us that we can then take down into some actionable goals for this committee. I believe that the general objective of this committee is to report back to the select board in 1 year's time, on recommendations that this committee finds. So with that in mind, I'm going to stop talking because Barbara's not a chair, so she can control it.
I was going to ask on the suggestion that we report back, is that coming from the select board?
Yes, that was part of the stipulation of the creation of the committee.
Okay. And does the board have any other suggestions that they would like for us to consider?
So I would say as long as it falls under the mission statement and charge that was sent out to everybody, I think that, it's our game to decide. Whether it be, a report back that just outlines, where we think Burlington is and where we want Burlington to go, whether it's more action oriented in terms of, you know, things this committee might want to see implemented. You know, I think that we can kind of take the lead and, you know, bring those suggestions to the select board for sure.
Okay. I was wondering if there was a reference in any documentation or any legislation that has passed that references diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Specifically in the town,
Yes.
I would imagine that there's language within human resources that would, you know, ensure that, you know, from a human resources perspective, that we're being compliant with state and federal law. But the select board, to my knowledge, has never passed any particular policy around DEI. I think that, you know, with the schools moving forward, I mean, having had, you know, moved forward in recent years around this topic, and recently with the hiring of Mr. Porch, you know, within the schools, the town feels it's time to also keep pace and ensure that, you know, the conversation that's being had, you know, at the school level is also being had at the town level, not just for our staff, but for the community, right? Because I mean, our students and their, you know, grownups are a part of this community. And then that community extends further beyond, you know, just that. So it only makes sense that we were in you know, some semblance of lockstep. So in terms of existing policies the town has, no, I don't believe any actually exist. I could be wrong. I could stand corrected at a later date, but
I'll check in with HR. Who's the head of human resources?
that would be Joanne Faust.
I think there might be some language within the master plan regarding that, but I don't think it's extensive. And I agree with what you said about, you know, kind of falling in step with the schools and with the eventual goal. I know this is very early days. This committee could evolve into more of a town office type thing, as you know, likely know there are other towns that do have DEI officers or DEI offices, and that's something like a long-term goal that could be something we wanted to move towards.
Yeah, that's a great point, Nancy. And just something I want to raise that I raised in our transportation committee as well is, and this is kind of a kick I've been on for the last year anyways, throughout all facets of my life, is don't let logistics murder good ideas. So I think that we should start with good ideas. We should start with strategy. And then when it comes to things like funding and logistics and other things, we can then tackle those problems as a secondary, you know, action. You know, because it's, again, just like reactionarily, like once you say like, hey, how about a new position? I think anybody is like, that costs money.
Sure.
Of course.
You know, and without question, right? I think that, you know, that's almost like an obvious. But when we're talking about tax dollars, we want to be, you know, cognizant of that fact. In any case, like I said, logistics murder a good idea. Barbara, I don't know if you can see Carl had his hand up. I don't want to, again, I'm talking a lot for vice chair here, so I'm going to shut up for a moment.
That's okay. Has there been a definition of what is diversity? What is equity? What is inclusion for the town of Burlington?
I don't think there has. Again, beyond what the schools have done, I don't think that we've identified or defined any of these things. I think that, and I guess to that point, you know, it would be great if, you know, Carl or I see Martha on the call, or, you know, whoever we can get in contact with to kind of like not retread, but to, you know, leverage what's been done to the schools as a way to kind of get us up to speed a bit faster. Because I'd hate to, you know, retread what the schools have already done in an effort to, because I mean, basically we're starting at ground zero, you know.
That was what I was going to suggest is get in touch with Ray Porch or some of the surrounding towns that do have similar position, just to pick their brains, see how they got started, see if they have any ideas for us to move forward.
Has there been an opportunity to look at data that is collected every 10 years about ethnicity and race in Burlington?
Not sure I'm fully catching the question. So have we looked at it or?
Well, we nationally, every 10 years, we collect the data on race for every town, city, state, and nationally. And I wonder if we've collected that data and we have used that data here in Burlington.
We can definitely talk to Amy about that. When it comes to, the census collection. I know that recently it was just completed because we just had to readjust our precincts a little bit, based on at least population numbers. But I'm sure that she can provide us the actual, ethnicity breakdown of anyone who filled out the census. I think
It's available online.
is it?
It's actually available online.
Oh, awesome.
What I'm actually curious, I think I asked Amy this before, was like who's involved in like town positions and town government, like what the backgrounds are, because I think, again, one of the goals of this, I think, is just to make our town more diverse on all levels. So our community has really increased in diversity, and I would like to see more diversity within like, town government, but also, in the town offices. But I think she said that might not be possible. But the census data is long answer to a question. The census data is available online.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know from, Nancy, from an elected official position, the question of diversity, I agree. I think that, the people who are elected officials should represent, the community, right? The question is, how do you get people to run? Right? Because from an elected official position, anything that's elected, right, we have to get somebody out into the community that's gonna, take a seat, right? So, I guess that goes back to one of BEC's, kind of charges, which is like
Yeah,
increasing.
this is actually one of our big projects to get more people running, and just bring more people to elections. Because one is, yes, we need more people running, but even before that, we need more civic participation on the town level. I think the stats are something like, 90% of people will come to the presidential election, but it's only like 15% on average come to the town election. And then you have very close elections that could have been completely different if more people showed up or knew about the town election. One thing BC is hoping to work with Amy, and she has worked with us with the previous election. We just want people to know that there is an election. We're finding that as we talk to people, some of them just didn't know. And maybe a town postcard, like something like that, just to, increase the equity of like, do people even hear about it? Do they know about it? And I think that might be a good way to approach it. And then just to go back to what you're saying, well, how do we get people to run? I think part of it's just, talking to people and encouraging them. For example, I'm in town meeting, and that was a really good way to enter. And I think for people looking to do that, it's a lower commitment and there's a lot of seats on there. So I think we've been trying to get more people of different backgrounds to give that a try. And a lot of it's just, person to person, word of mouth. But we also, you probably saw it, the BEC website, our big thing last election was the candidate guide. So just so people know who the heck they're voting for, if they do end up going. So that is a big thrust here. And I would love if the DEI committee could work together with BEC and other groups to increase that participation.
Yeah. Something else too, from an elected official position, something that I encountered when I was running for office was the lack of permeability through apartment complexes.
Yes.
It's very difficult to reach people, who are in apartments. You have to spend either a lot of dollars of your own, your campaign money, or you gotta, being there physically just isn't really, allowable. I remember I had spent a couple hours in Beacon Village's like common space. hoping to catch me. I talked to one guy.
Probably didn't find many people there.
Yeah, I mean, just, people who either knew I was there or, didn't get the call or missed it. One guy, I was there for 4 hours, and it's tough because there's a big portion of our population who are almost being secluded from the community, through a variety of, unintentional circumstances. To be able to break down those walls, I think would be a very interesting task for us to try and, how do we loop in all the different facets of the community?
I think just to add to that, I think there's also, who's eligible to vote, right? If you're not a citizen, you can't even vote in a town election, and that might actually be something to look at. Like, can residents vote in a town election? But the apartment thing, yeah, how to reach, there's so many people there, but how do you really reach them? And the pandemic, of course, makes, maybe canvassing a lot more difficult, but at the same time, having remote options can help. And I think a lot of it's just in like what part of what I've been trying to do with BEC, and thank you for those kind words at the beginning, Nick. It's just trying to, combine the power of all these different groups. So there's more like a centralized location for things and to collaborate on projects. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Thank you for sharing. Nick, if we want to meet more than once a month, is there a way that we can manage to do that?
Yeah, I think this comes down to coordinating what works for the 5 of us. So, if Wednesdays are our night, and, we can all coordinate more than once a month, I think that's doable.
Okay. The reason that I was thinking is that there's an opportunity here to speak with Amy, to look at the data that's been gathered as a way of measuring where we are, to look at any documents or any legislation with policies, to figure out the definition of words. And we want to meet more frequently to get our arms around that. And then develop the strategy for how we move forward. So I was going to suggest that we might meet every other week at the beginning to determine our direction.
Sure. I mean, if that works for everybody else, I mean, I'll certainly do my best to make all the meetings. Yeah.
I think that makes sense to set up some sort of, the definitions, but also the goals and some sort of like overall plan, mission statement sort of thing. So
Absolutely.
I think that's important.
Yeah, so our mission statement and our charter set as a part of the formation of the committee, and I'll make it a task of mine to resend that to everybody. But in terms of, the definitions and beginning to form some, the foundation of what we're talking about. Yeah, we can, I mean, Barbara, I would say, because something that we can't talk about in email is, dates and times. So, if again, I'm just suggesting as vice chair, if you'd like to, as chair, propose, like a series of calendar, dates for how you'd like to see this move forward. We can all take a look at that, and, I can kind of coordinate around other meetings on Wednesdays for myself, and then we can get everything set up and booked in advance.
That sounds like a good strategy. And as an example, I can share with you definitions of what diversity means, what equity means, what inclusion means, and we can look at those and decide what's the best for us to look at, and then share with the board that we would like for them to consider these definitions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we should also think about too, in terms of communication with the rest of the select board, do we want to wait the 1 year and do one final report? Does it make sense to do 2 reports? We should, because the intent was that we would function as a committee for 1 year and then report back our findings and our suggestions and recommendations to the board at that time. But if this committee feels like, various touch points over the year makes the most sense. That things that we need defined or voted on by the select board sooner need to happen for this committee to progress. And we should also be having those conversations as well.
I would like to suggest that the committee consider quarterly reports. So if we begin with November, then in 3 months' time, that's when we would begin to report to the select board on the efforts that we've made and the successes that we've had, or where we need additional support from them. Does that
I agree with that approach.
I was going to say it. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Right. Thumbs up.
I had a request to turn my personal camera on, so I guess the main room isn't pointing at me, so.
All right.
I am here.
So if we're looking ahead, just to verify, today's the 27th, so the next meeting would be on Wednesday, November 10th. And instead of doing it in 2 weeks, we might wait another week because that's the day before Thanksgiving. So we might want to look at December 1st.
Okay, so November 10th and December 1st, you're saying that's the next two?
Yes. And then December 15th. So that should get us going. We can mark our calendars and then begin to move ahead.
Okay, let me, Barbara, let me confirm those 3 dates and get back to you this week on that. I don't think it'll be an issue looking at the calendar. But in terms of coordinating around other meetings, I want to make sure that I'm not stepping on my own toes.
Got it.
So in terms of taking that big step back and talking to what the schools have done, is there a certain, I'm looking at Carl for this, is there an approach that we should take? Is there people that we should bring into the conversation, documents we should see? What can we kind of get our hands on?
Well, the approach that Mr. Porch is taking is facilitating an audit, and that's something that's longer term. As far as shorter term tasks, so to speak, I guess I've thought about a conversation with Ray and see exactly what they're doing, and maybe we can mimic some of the things on a townwide scale.
And then wasn't there, am I mistaken in thinking that there was another district committee that also existed or exists?
Yes, it was run by Mr. Larkin, Patrick Larkin, the assistant superintendent, and had a number of stakeholders. And I was just reminded that one thing that the committee had done is draft an equity statement. We did that this past summer, and kind of hashed out some core values as well. So that's something we might consider as also.
Okay. So we can harass Patrick Larkin about that.
Sure.
Key phrase, harass. I saw Sherry had commented that the EEOC has all municipal employment statistics for us as well. Thank you, Sherry. Okay.
Who is Sherry?
Sharon Ellis is on the call with us. She's a town meeting member. Sharon, if you want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Nick. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Sharon Ellis, a town meeting member. I worked with some of the folks, I think Nancy and others, to bring the DEI position to the schools. I'm very much interested in the work, and looking forward to what the committee can do, and hope to be of any assistance I can.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
And Martha Simon.
Hi, I'm a member of the school committee who's been involved with a lot of equity work in the town for a number of years, and I'm just delighted that the town equity DEI committee is starting tonight, and I'm very impressed so far. I would like to be a resource in any way I can be, although Carl is the school committee representative. But I look forward to meeting those of you who I haven't met yet.
Great. Nice to meet you, Martha. And there's another Martha.
Martha Garfield. I'm the Chief Equity Officer for the Town of Lexington. I'm also the President of Burlington Against Racism and the co-chair of the Burlington Equity Coalition.
Hello, Martha.
Hi, DJ. Or should I say Madam Chair?
Thank you. So I wonder if there are any other thoughts, comments that people would like to share?
I have one because it's kind of just general equity in terms of any town meeting, or town government related meeting. And actually, Nick, this refers particularly to the select board. Public participation, I notice it's usually at the end of meetings. I think to make it more equitable and make sense for it to be at the beginning, like in the school committee. And I don't usually attend other meetings, but I don't know how it is for other groups and committees. But I think that would make sense and make it more accessible to more of the public, especially people who might have limited time and can't stay on the call for a couple hours waiting to say something. I mean, there was a previous experience where someone was waiting to speak on a call and didn't get to. So I just don't want that to happen. My other thing that I want to bring up too is, pandemic has made remote meetings a way of life. But I think even past the pandemic, when things are safer, for some people that will always be an option that might be easier, especially parents who may not be able to get childcare, other people who just have really tight schedules or wouldn't otherwise be able to make it into the meeting. So those are just two things regarding equity in terms of like town government meetings.
Yeah, I can actually speak to at least the second one more definitively. So I know that, and we can absolutely move because the three of us are here. Thank you both for coming. These can be moved to fully remote. So the governor stated that up until April of 2022, we're allowed to hold meetings fully remote. In terms of after that, if it goes back to the way it was, we have a remote participation policy in place that we actually instituted before the pandemic. It just requires that a quorum of this body is held in person, and then everybody else can be remote, or people can be remote for circumstances, which are defined. I forget exactly what they are. Because there are 5 of us, that means that 3 of us need to be here. So come April, we'll have to revisit, what is kind of going on. But up until then, we can be fully remote. And I agree, Nancy. I think that, getting people engaged should be as easy as allowing them to go to burlington.org and then click on join meeting, right? I've just seen a natural uptick in participation from people who normally otherwise wouldn't log in, come to a meeting, but are logging into calls, because why wouldn't you if you're at home?
Yep.
I mean, it's so easy. So, whatever happens in April, I think that, we should work towards considering some kind of remote policy, and maybe, ask the select board to petition, the state or the governor to, amend that so that from a community aspect and participation perspective, we can maintain, that level of inclusivity, because I think that that's really important. And I know, selfishly, with 4 kids, I really enjoyed having it.
Yeah, no, it's really helpful with kids. And then for some people, it might even be transportation. So, I mean, I think as a member of the committee, if I had to come in, I could do that, but especially for public participation, I would like people to be able to dial in. So
Yeah, for
more
sure.
be involved.
And we'll keep this, these meetings, posted and available, and then, I'll record them so we can post them afterwards, so people can watch them, or at least give them the BCAT so they can post them. And again, in an effort to make things as available as humanly possible. When it comes to public participation and citizens' time, every board committee handles it differently, and it's at the discretion of the chair. And so you'll actually see sometimes it'll change depending on the chair's discretion. I don't disagree with you, though. I think that if, certain parameters were set around citizens' time and that level of participation, whether it be each speaker gets 3 minutes, the rules are clearly laid out, that could be moved to the front to engage with the public more so. I know that a lot of elected officials that I've talked to say that in today's day and age, with email and, phone being available, that you can reach out to an elected official in any way, shape or form. And, where it sits in the agenda is almost a little bit less important. I don't know if I would agree with that 110%. But, I think that, that will always follow the discretion of the chair, and that we'll have to, do our best to just advocate for, it being earlier in the agenda.
Okay.
I like the suggestion. However, for the immediate tasks that we have in front of us, we need to define where we are and where we're going. And following that, then I would welcome participation from the public who wants to attend a meeting. But to have it when we're trying to decide what are we about, it's hard to pass that to the open audience and have them define where they think we should go. So it's just a difference in timing before we do this.
Okay. Yeah, I was just talking about town meetings in general, not particularly. Yeah, we're just started, so yeah, we don't want maybe not ready to handle.
Yeah, well, I think that what you were suggesting would apply to the select board as they conduct their meetings, because the rhythm is there and they're established and they know how to do that. We're at the beginning stage, and so we want to work our way toward that. Nick, is there anything else we should have on the agenda?
No, I think if we can start to get our feet under us,
Yes.
then I think that's the next and probably, best step. And then from there, we can decide how we want to pivot. So I mean, I'm on board with what we talked about, in terms of talking to Patrick Larkin and Mr. Porch, and seeing what makes sense in terms of area that they've kind of already treaded. And then I mean, I don't know if it makes sense, Barbara, for us to kind of do our own homework on the definitions, or if you have, I know you have a lot of experience, so if you already have definitions that you've used in the past that you can share with the rest of us that we can look at. And then at our next, maybe aim to invite Ray Porch and Patrick Larkin to our next meeting, and hear from them and review the definitions that you might have. That might be a solid next meeting attack. And then from there, we can decide, I think, next steps.
Great. Yes, we'll have that on the agenda for our next meeting, is to talk about the definition, and I'll share information ahead of that meeting so you have time to think about it, and then we can join together and talk about our thoughts.
That sounds like a good plan.
Sounds good.
Anything else on the agenda?
Don't think so. That was the big one.
And we got it all done. Time. Thanks for leading us, Nick.
Oh, happy to. I mean, I'm here to help in any capacity I can. I think that this is important stuff, and that we need to be open to having these conversations. So, I'm here.
Right.
A thumbs up.
Everybody, just so you know that my email address, I'll give it to you here. We use my initials in small letters, B.J. Addison, ADDISONREID at Verizon, BERIZON.net. So if you send me an email, then I'll have the way to respond to you with the new agenda and any documents we need when we chat in 2 weeks.
Okay. Commissioner Steve?
Can hardly hear you.
Is that any better?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Just two things I wanted to alert the group of. There is a group called Mass DEI Coalition. We meet every other Friday from 12 to 1. And it's mostly people like me who are the equity officers or the DEI directors of their communities. But there are also administrators in the towns that do not have them, or people leading certain departments where it would be appropriate to attend. I find it's a great place of shared information and knowledge. And so if anyone from this committee would like to be part of that, I'm happy to send your email along to the people who organize that group. Also, there is the legislation, the CARES Act, which is an anti-racist education petition to have that be incorporated into our curriculum. I have sent it to Patrick Larkin and Grace Porch, but I know in the community that I work, we are going to send a joint letter between the town and the school to show the importance of having this anti-racist legislation be a component of at the state level, and it will also, I think, take some pressure off individual communities to forward these tasks. It's something that's required at the state level. So if that's something that this committee would be interested in, I can also pass that information along as well.
It was difficult hearing you because your voice seemed far away. I thought you suggested that there was a committee meeting on Friday afternoons.
For the Mass DEI Coalition, which is a group of people who are equity officers like myself, and for communities that don't have somebody like myself, it is the town administrators or other leaders in that community who are interested in pushing the DEI initiatives forward in their communities.
And so is your thought that if we communicate with DEI from other towns, that we've expanded beyond Burlington? Is that your suggestion?
It is an offer to connect anybody on the subcommittee who has the time or interest to join, because I find it's a very helpful resource for me to do my job.
Martha, I think that we're catching what you're saying. And thank you for the offer. Could you just put it in a quick email to us? So that way, like,
Yeah.
we're fully catching what you're saying. It's just, I don't know if the connection's wonky or whatever. But I did catch the Mass DEI Coalition. I appreciate the invite. And I think that it'd be worthwhile for someone here, or maybe it's a rotational thing, that we can attend and keep that conversation going.
Plugging it. Great. That sounds good.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Just logistically speaking, I'll make sure I send around, Barbara and Carl for you folks, like agenda and minutes and all the stuff that Amy can send along to me. That way we're all on the same page. And then Barbara, when it comes to setting the meetings, doing meeting postings and the WebEx stuff, I'll absolutely help out with that. It's a whole process.
How far in advance do you have to post the agenda?
48 hours.
48 hours, okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Other thoughts? Can we close the meeting?
I'm happy to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Nancy, yes or no?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right,
Right.
so it's 500 to adjourn.
Yes, 500 to adjourn. We meet in 2 weeks at 6.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye.